So how you enter into that mentoring relationship now with kids is going to determine whether they're actually going to replicate what you're doing as they move into their adult years.
Wayne? I know you're thinking we should take a break. I want to throw out a challenge to folks. I was going to say I want to help you make this talk relevant, but that doesn't come across quite right.
You can see this has been a humbling process that we've gone through.
We're still working on my calling a strength-based approach.
Right.
And then the social skills. What I'm really kind of struck by, I train school counselors, and I'm in a program where we're training people to be counselors and be therapeutic, and I struggle. In the field of counseling, unlike clinical psychology, we really try to embrace a strengths-based, positive orientation, and yet it sometimes feels soft, it's not empirically supported, these sorts of things. And yet I know that's not true, but I feel a sense of bias and struggle to work with this. Now, I'm sharing that because I think one of the key issues in mentoring and also in education is involving men and finding men and selling the message in a way. And I just want to encourage people who are interested in the issue of how do we recruit more men into teaching and into counseling and into mentoring to think about this, because if we agree that the strength-based approach is really what we need to do and need to espouse, and it clearly is what mentoring is about. Mentoring is a strength-based fostering activity. How do we deal with this? Mm-hmm. How do we deal with men's sort of genetic need to fix problems, fix things, rather than be attentive and listen and establish a relationship? Sorry, men. But I think there's a real application of this for helping us think about how do we pitch mentoring to men in ways that they can grasp the importance of the things they'll need to do to be effective mentors.
Right. Yeah, so we're going to take a break here. But he's right, and I think in many ways. I mean, oftentimes, anybody who's been married here now knows that, our desire to fix things usually has to have consultation. So Mike and I have been kind of playing with this, and anyways, I think leadership is applicable. Like really what you're inviting kids into in many ways is the new generation of leadership and influence. But anyways, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and finish off with a few concepts. Where I'd like to invite you into some thoughts, and I really we may be skipping a few slides. So the information's in your handouts, okay? Because I really want to make sure I'm staying away from sort of lecturing. And we know what happens with lectures, right? I remember presenting to a bunch of youth once, and one of the youth stood up and said, Wayne, what does a PhD stand for? And before I could respond, one of his enlightened colleagues said, piled higher and deeper. So anyways, part of this is that I'm reflecting in many ways the importance of mentoring because it was a critical factor in my own life. I think most of us can probably look back on our lives, and there's probably been a few individuals who played a pretty pivotal role in helping you to define who you were and maybe where you were going to go in life or the type of relationships you were going to engage in. And in my life, I remember back in grade 3, and I can still remember the day when a teacher told me that I was stupid. She used that term. That was a pivotal point for me because I started to define myself as that because it made me angry. If I look back at the process, that's what happened. It generated something inside of me that said, somebody described me in a way that I don't see myself. But I don't know how to express myself. I don't know how to see myself because nobody's come alongside and done that for me. So therefore, I accepted the label and said, if you're going to say I'm stupid, then I'm going to show you how stupid I can be. And so I kept that mantle for right up through to, in Ontario, we had grade 13, right? We had one more year to kind of figure things out than the rest of Canada. And, all through that, I defaulted to behavior to express who I was because somebody told me that my thoughts were inappropriate or I wasn't right in what I was doing. And it wasn't until I was about 26 because I went out and worked laying bricks, programming computers, doing all sorts of things, but nothing that really tied to my passions and my strengths. And I went to the University of Western Ontario, and I went and, back then they had, and they might still have it, where you have to write an entrance exam because they wanted to know whether you could write or not. There was a lot of history of people getting into university and not being able to articulate their views in papers, et cetera. So they had this standard. And I wrote it, and I got 10 out of 100. And so they basically said, Wayne, we told you you weren't the university material, and we've just proved it, so you should go back and do whatever you're going to do in life. But I had a professor there that I actually had lunch with, and I was kind of talking to him about who I was and what I wanted to do in life, and he came back to me and said, so how did you do? I says, well, I got 10 out of 100. And he says, well, I don't think those tests are worth dit squat anyways. So he said, I'm going to spend some time with you. Are you okay with that? And I said, sure. And he actually, what he did is he taught me the English language in the next 4 months because he saw that that was what was holding me back. It wasn't that I didn't have the ability. It was just that there were certain things that I didn't have as part of my skill set that would allow expression for certain things. And then I went back to university. Well, I actually did an MDiv. I did 2 undergrads. I've done a PhD. But I got a 4.0 right through every one of those years. But because somebody kind of looked behind the behavior. Are we doing that? And this is where we get to this idea of perception. Because how you perceive things is going to determine whether you can hear the story. What we talked about is that relationships are the catalyst for change. But if you want to get into somebody's life, if you want somebody to get into your life, if you want to develop that mentoring relationship, you've got to get into their life. And how you get in is going to determine whether you actually have that relationship and influence. So perception, in my mind, is the starting point. And I've got a story.
Degas, the great artist, said self-doubt kills ability. Are you impressed that I know about Degas, the great French impressionist? Born 1767, died 1833, created 1,500 impressionist paintings. Do I look like anybody who knows about Degas? Please. I thought his name was Degas. I thought he was from Quincy, Mass. But I got ADD, and so I watch 8 shows at once. So a couple of years ago, I'm clicking in the back, and I stop on public broadcasting for about 30 seconds. And they're doing these biopics of the great artists of all time. So Degas is the guy who paints those brown-tinged ballerina pictures. So in this scene I'm watching for 30 seconds, he's talking to a little ballerina who's obviously struggling with her confidence, and he says, self-doubt kills ability. I said, I'm going to remember that line. Strength-based says every one of these kids has amazing ability, but they won't use it if they don't believe in themselves. And they're not going to believe unless they have people like you and me getting in there every day, showing them, helping them demonstrate that they have these skills. This woman, Beth Caldwell, who changed my life, cited a few anecdotes that speak dramatically to the power of believing in this strength-based approach. First one occurred in elementary school many years ago. School has the most difficult 4th grade class in the history of the school. 2 teachers quit in September because the kids are so unruly. Principal couldn't keep a substitute in the room. He has to keep going in there, and he can barely manage the kids. He's not sure what to do. Maybe break them up. He doesn't know. Early October, he gets a resume from a young woman who never taught a day in her life other than her little internship. He hires her on the spot for the class, doesn't tell her it's the most difficult class in the history of the school. The other teachers complain, how can you do this to her? She'll last 1 day and never teach again. You want to go back in there? Hire her. Sometimes you hire someone to fill a slot. So, mid-October, she strolls in for her very first day of teaching. He escorts her into the room. Kids come in. He leaves. He paces the hallway anxiously, waiting for all hell to break loose. Not one behavior problem the first hour. Says, okay, it's a honeymoon. They're setting her up for something big later in the day. Whole first day goes by without an issue. The teacher room after school, no one could talk about anything else. How could she do that? How could she go a whole day with those monsters? That's impossible. They're setting her up for something big tomorrow, they say. Second day, no problems. Third day, no problems. Week, 2, 3, 4 weeks go by. Not only are there no problems, but the kids start coming to school on time, dressing better, doing their homework. People are flabbergasted. True story. Finally, after 2 months of dramatic turnaround on every single kid, whole group of teachers go en masse to the principal and say, you better get in there. Something illegal's going on in that room. No first-year teacher could do what she's doing without threatening, without bribing. You better get in before something hits the fan. Now, he doesn't want to touch his class with a 10-foot pole, but he reluctantly agrees to see what's going on. So right before the Christmas break, he walks in after another fabulous day, and she notices him. And before he can say anything, she says, oh, Dr. So-and-so, glad you came by. I've been wanting to talk to you for quite a while. He goes, oh, yeah? About what? He says, I wanted to come down and thank you for what you did on my first day of teaching. I still get goosebumps when I think about it. Now, he's guilty all this time. He says, thank me for what? Cut it out. You know what you did. He says, Fine, I'll tell you, Mr. Modesty. You knew I'd be nervous and anxious having never really taught in a big school before, so what'd you do that first day? He goes, you came into my room before the students arrived, you went up to my desk, you took out a big piece of paper, and on that piece of paper you wrote down the name of every kid in the class. Then right next to their name you put their IQ number. Then you taped it to my desk and you waited for me to come in. Well, I'm telling you, doctor, that was amazing. Because you were right, I was nervous, I was anxious. I remember walking into that room, putting my stuff down in the back, nervously approaching the front desk, then seeing this paper, then doing a double take and yelling out loud, can you believe this? My very first class, and he's given me the honor students, the brightest, sharpest kids in the school. And I tell you, Doc, I've been on a high ever since, knowing that you would entrust me with the most precious assets in this building. Doctor, I can't wait to get up in the morning to see these kids. I hate to leave them. 4 times I've wanted to come down and thank you, but I'm so into the group, I stay and eat lunch with them every day. So I go, I don't leave. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you. Hope your faith in me has been well placed. True story, guy can't even talk. He's got this ashen look on his face. Finally, after 2 minutes of utter silence, he looks back at the woman, he says, those were their locker numbers. True story. Why'd those kids do so well? Why'd she do so well? Attitude. What was her experience level compared to all the other teachers in the building? Zip. Yet she did what no one else would do. Let's face it, working with kids or raising your own kids is about one word, probability. I have no clue how the 10 tough kids I'm working with in the school district are going to behave today.